Single dad discovers his babysitter for twin daughters is the CEO's hidden daughter, an incredible twist of fate. Jake stood outside the charming little hardware store that had been his lifeline since his wife's passing. The sign above him creaked gently in the afternoon breeze, a sound he had grown accustomed to, a reminder of the peaceful small-town life he had carved out for himself and his spirited twin daughters, Lily and Emma. The girls, with their wild curls and laughter like chimes, filled his heart with an echo of joy and sorrow intertwined. They were everything to him. He had promised to be the dad they needed, even under the vibrant specter of their late mother's memory. Just then, Jake's phone buzzed in his pocket, snapping him from his thoughts. "Dad. Can Sarah come today?" Lily's voice came through, bright and excited, with Emma chattering in the background. Sarah was the young babysitter who had breezed into their lives like a summer storm, unexpected but refreshing. He felt a lump in his throat, the reminder of long work hours and dwindling foot traffic at the store pressing heavily against his chest. "I guess so," Jake replied, tension easing slightly. Maybe, just maybe, Sarah could help him manage these chaotic days, filled with work and worried plans. When Sarah arrived, the twins immediately lit up. "Yay, it's Sarah!" They squealed, rushing toward her, wrapping their little arms around her waist. Jake, watching from a distance, felt a strange pang of relief and apprehension. She was in her early 20s, with a shiny smile and an infectious laughter that spilled over like sunshine on a bright day. She was perfect on paper, but Jake had always imagined a life simple, framed by humble routine and not the undercurrents he sensed in her. As the days turned into weeks, Jake began to see the good in their unconventional arrangement. Sarah taught Lily and Emma how to plant herbs, while Jake watched, a smile creeping onto his face despite the weight of his worries. The bond forming was unexpected. Sarah was not just a babysitter, she was becoming a friend. But shadows loomed larger, fewer customers trickled into the hardware store. Anxiety tightened around Jake like a vice grip, he couldn't fail his girls. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue." But even as moments of laughter and love filled their home, a storm brewed on the horizon. Whispers about the tech company Sarah's father ran rippled through Maplewood, stirring a sense of unease. She had never mentioned him, and Jake began to feel the weight of her secret hovering between them. Then came the town meeting, a critical moment when truths about families, financial struggles, and privilege would collide. As Sarah stood beside him, her hands trembling like leaves in a gust, Jake's heart raced. He sensed change coursing through their lives. The familiar rhythm of his world was about to shift, and he was not sure if he was ready. Would the laughter and warmth of his girls endure the impending storm? Everything seemed intertwined in a way that pushed and pulled, but Jake felt it. There was hope, tinged with uncertainty, as they stood on the precipice of something new. What would the outcome be when love faced the truth of privilege? Jake paced in front of the town hall, the air dense with anticipation. Behind him, a small crowd gathered, drawn by the promise of answers to the struggles of small businesses, to the undercurrents of wealth that flowed through Maplewood like a hidden stream. He stole a glance at Sarah, who stood quietly, her demeanor a gentle contrast to the tension swirling around them. "Are you okay?" Jake asked, his voice low, trying to mask his own anxiety. "Just nervous," she replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. It was clear that whatever revelations awaited them in that meeting felt looming and personal. As the mayor called the meeting to order, Jake's stomach knotted. He was surrounded by familiar faces, neighbors, friends, fellow store owners. They all looked to him, the single dad who was trying to keep his head above water. But what if the truth about Sarah turned their fragile connection upside down? Would they still accept him when they learned exactly who she was? "First, I'd like to address the current financial struggles many of you are facing," the mayor started, his voice steady but somber. We are in discussions with TechCorp. Jake's breath caught at the name. That was Sarah's father's company. To explore potential initiatives that would help local businesses thrive. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Jake felt Sarah stiffen in surprise. He hadn't known TechCorp was involved in the town's economy discussions. The promise of jobs and funding danced in the air, but Jake's heart sank. What would that mean for his store? Would it close the distance between him and Sarah or create a chasm that swallowed them whole? And while we are hopeful, the mayor continued, it's crucial for everyone to remember that these investments come with strings attached. When he finally turned to Sarah, her expression mirrored his worries, hope tugging at her features, but uncertainty tempered it. Could her father's wealth really plunge them into a different world? One unfamiliar to Jake, where they didn't have to scrape by every day? Just then, a loud voice cut across the room. But what about the small guys? What protections do we have? Tom, a lumberyard owner, stood, his face flushed in anger. All I see is us being left behind while TechCorp swoops in. Jake felt a collective tension rise. People were beginning to voice their fears. As discussions layered over each other, parrying the sharp truths of privilege against the gritty reality of their lives, Jake felt Sarah's hand brush against his. It was an anchor, grounding him against the chaos. People like us need reassurance, not a handout, someone else shouted, and Jake's heart raced. It was true. He didn't want charity, he wanted opportunity and equal playing field. Yet as the conversation heated, Jake noticed Sarah's face falling. I should have told you sooner, she whispered, her voice trembling. Dad came here to fix things, but I don't want that to change us. Her words hung heavy in the air as the discussion swelled with the tension of truth. Jake felt the weight of her revelation. He could see the fear of rejection in her eyes, mirroring his own insecurities. Sarah, he started, unsure of where to take this moment that felt so raw. Would they push through the barrier or let it divide them? Before he could speak again, the mayor's gavel struck sharply. Let us not lose sight of the community we are, he urged, steering the discussion back. But something was cracking beneath his steady tone. Jake breathed deeply, contemplating his girls, his store, and the possibility of hope blooming from this storm. He turned to Sarah, ready to confront their reality together. But then the town's anxiety erupted into an unexpected outburst, and the floodgates of distrust opened. Could he remain the father they needed when his heart was pulling him towards someone new? And how could they navigate a future fraught with privilege and secrets? As the chaos unfolded, one question echoed through his thoughts: where would they stand when the dust finally cleared? The chaos in the town hall erupted into a cacophony of voices, each one demanding their piece of understanding, their voice amidst the growing fear and uncertainty. Jake felt the heat rising in his chest as he tried to absorb the reality around him. Sarah's presence beside him felt both comforting and terrifying at the same time, an unresolved bond weighed down by hidden truths. People are scared, he finally said, raising his voice over the crowd. And for good reason. We're talking about our livelihoods. His eyes darted around, seeking support from familiar faces. But how do we know TechCorp will truly help? They can't just swoop in and take over. The room quieted, if only for a moment. Jake felt a surge of courage. This was his community, these were his friends, and they needed a champion. Yet, as he spoke, he glimpsed at Sarah, her face pale, eyes wide with a mix of surprise and fear. How would they see her once they knew who she really was? Then, just as hope flickered in Jake's heart, a voice rang out louder than before. What's in it for them? It came from Penny, the elderly shopkeeper who had been in Maplewood longer than anyone could remember. They'll come in, lay down their rules, and we'll be left wondering what happened to our town. A round of murmurs spread, agreement and dissent mingling as emotions swirled. Jake glanced at Sarah, whose face now bore an uneasy mixture of determination and dread. I need to say something, she whispered urgently. He nodded, urging her ahead with a wave of his hand. This was it. The moment of truth was fast approaching. She took a deep breath, stepping slightly forward, drawing the people's gaze. The room grew quiet again. I know what it's like to be scared. My family was once part of a small community, too. My father, he just wants to help. I believe that Tech Corp can provide support. But I understand that can sound empty. I get it. Her voice cracked, revealing the raw vulnerability battling within her. Jake watched in awe as she spoke, feeling a swell of admiration deep in his chest. This was more than just an impromptu speech. It was a plea for unity at a time when division could easily take over. She was opening her heart, potentially risking everything. Sarah, what if Jake began, but she raised her hand, cutting him off. We can't keep it a secret. I just didn't know how to tell you all of you. Her gaze swept across the crowd, the energy shifting as faces registered shock and confusion. But I don't want it to come between us. Before she could finish, the mayor interjected, hammering the gavel again as murmurs erupted anew. Let us allow Sarah time to speak. His tone was commanding, cutting through the tension. As the crowd settled, Jake felt a strange mix of dread and anticipation. Would they accept her? Would his own fear of rejection as a father and a partner block out the spark of hope he felt when he first connected with Sarah? I grew up knowing how privileged I've been, Sarah continued, her voice strong again. But Maplewood means more to me than just my father's company. It's about community, what we build together. Jake sensed the weight of her words capturing everyone's attention. Around him, faces hardened, softened, and hardened again. Just give us a chance, she implored, her voice trembling but resolute. Tech Corp can be a partner, but we have to work together to protect what makes us strong. Jake watched as the crowd exchanged glances, uncertainty giving way to contemplation. He felt the quiet urge of his own heart beat harder. If he stood with her, risking the ire of friends and the comfort of familiarity, they might find a new path forward together. But what if that path led to more heartbreak and division? As the voices quieted, he faced the crowd, suddenly aware of the collective weight of their gazes upon him. Now it was his turn. Would he stand with Sarah, or would the town's doubts and fears keep him tethered to the past? As he opened his mouth to speak, a sudden crash echoed from outside, drawing everyone's attention away in a flash. The moment hung precariously, tipping between resolution and chaos. What fresh challenge awaited them now? The sound of shattering glass cut through the tension like a knife. Panic rippled across the crowd. Jake's pulse quickened. He spun around, searching for where the noise had come from. His heart thudded against his chest as Sarah's hand gripped his tightly, squeezing as if to steady both their nerves. What was that? She whispered, urgency lacing her voice. Let us find out, Jake replied, his instinct to protect taking over. He stepped away from the podium, urging Sarah to follow him. The crowd began to whisper, uncertainty swirling around them, some people standing up to peek out the windows while others shifted uneasily in their seats as he reached the door, pushing it open, the sharp winter air rushing in, mingling with the scent of fear. Outside, a figure lay sprawled across the ground, the shattered remains of what looked like an old street lamp scattered around. A group of teens stood a few feet away, looking more startled than guilty. Jake felt a mix of confusion and anger as he hurried down the steps. Are you okay? He called out to the person on the ground. It was a man, younger than Jake, maybe in his 20s, and he looked dazed but otherwise unharmed. I'm fine, the man replied, brushing himself off. Just slipped, thought I could jump it before it fell. He offered a sheepish smile that faded when he realized the seriousness of the situation. Jake glanced back at the town hall. The momentum of hope and courage Sarah had built felt like it was on the brink of collapse. The murmurs inside were growing again, people torn between sympathy for the young man and worries of a more pressing threat. He took a deep breath, trying to refocus. Maybe it's not just a mistake, he said aloud, addressing the curious crowd that had begun to emerge from the hall. Maybe it means something. What does that mean? One of the bystanders shouted, skepticism brimming in their voice. I think we need to come together, not just to face our fears about Tech Corp but everything around us, every challenge. Look, things are changing so fast now, Jake replied, scanning the crowd's faces, trying to find allies amidst the uncertainty. We can't let fear dictate our actions. We have to stand together. Sarah moved closer, her eyes aflame with determination. Jake's right. We've been divided by our fear, but we can unite our strengths. That's what he and I what's brought us here. We need to trust each other if we want a future for Maplewood. It's easy to say that now. Penny shouted back, her eyebrows knitted together. Words 1T feed our families or protect our homes. I know it 1T, Jake said, raising his hands for calm. But actions will. We can start by helping each other repairing what's broken, not just in this meeting, but in our lives. Whatever TechCorp's intentions, we need to define our community. The vibration of unease shifted somewhat. Faces softened as the idea of togetherness began to resonate, but he could still feel the lingering doubts. With every beat of his heart, Jake realized the stakes. This wasn't just about him and Sarah anymore. It was about everyone standing there, hoping for something better but terrified of what that could mean. The fates of their families intertwined more tightly than the roots of the ancient trees surrounding Maplewood, and then he heard a voice, soft yet piercing through the moment. Jake. It was Sarah again, but this time her tone shifted, framing the urgency in her eyes and the way she stepped closer. I think I know how to truly show them something that might change the course. Jake's heart raced as her words settled in, curiosity mixing with anxiety. What did Sarah have in mind? It felt like a line had been drawn not only between the town and TechCorp but within themselves. As he looked into her face, a swirl of hope and fear filled the space between them, begging for something in answer, an assurance, a leap of faith. Then let us do it, he said finally, the idea setting fire to their conversation. Let us show them what we've got. But as he said it, a shadow began to loom over the gathering, bringing with it an unmistakable tension. What awaited them now? And could they trust the very aid they sought? The sudden shadow grew darker, looming against the fading sunlight as the crowd's murmurs turned into hurried whispers. Jake felt a chill skate up his spine. He turned, narrowing his eyes towards the figure that had stepped out from behind the onlookers. It was Riley, TechCorp's head of security. He towered above everyone, his presence alone demanding attention. Jake, he called out, his voice cold and clipped. I think it's time we had a chat. Sarah's grip tightened around Jake's arm. What does he want? She asked, the uncertainty marking her brow. I don't know, but we won't back down, Jake replied, his own heart pounding, a mixture of defiance and fear simmering within him. Riley approached, each step deliberate and measured. You're causing quite a stir, aren't you? He said, eyeing the crowd that was now either gathering closer or shying away. The nervous energy in the air was palpable. Jake took a breath, pushing himself forward. We're speaking for our community. We're tired of TechCorp's shadows looming over us and our future. Riley's lips twisted into a half-smile that felt more threatening than reassuring. You think you can rally these people behind you, huh? You think they want change? They want security, Jake. People get scared during uncertain times, are more inclined to follow fear than hope. You should know that. Every word was coated with condescension, and the crowd shifted uncomfortably. Jake could feel the air thickening with doubt. But he squared his shoulders, unwilling to let Riley have the upper hand. We need more than mere promises of security. We deserve to know we're part of a decision, not just pawns in a game. Riley took another step closer, leaning slightly as if confiding a secret. You're brave. I'll give you that. But brave people end up alone. You might want to rethink your stance before you become a target. Jake's throat ran dry. There it was, the threat hanging heavy like a fog, all but suffocating. He felt Sarah's hand slip from his arm to his back, brushing against him softly. It was a gesture of reassurance. He willed himself to swallow the fear and focus on the warmth that spread from her touch. We're not afraid of the truth, Jake declared, drawing strength from the support around him. He gestured towards the crowd again, his voice lifting with conviction. We deserve transparency. Every one of us deserves a voice. Riley chuckled, shaking his head. You really think that's how it works? The truth is a tricky thing, Jake. Are you ready for the consequences? Just as Jake opened his mouth to respond, a commotion erupted at the edge of the crowd. The voices grew frantic. A woman was pushing through the onlookers, her face pale and strained. "Jake!" she shouted, scrambling for his attention. "You need to listen. It's about TechCorp. They're hiding something big." Silence fell like a stone, every eye drawn to her as she stumbled forward, breaths quickening from nervousness and urgency. What more could there be? Jake's heart raced, his mind already racing ahead to the implications. "Tell me," he called out, steadying himself. The gaze of the crowd shifted back behind him, Riley fading momentarily into the background, but Jake could feel the tension building again, heavier than before. As the woman caught her breath, the air thickened with more than fear. It was a mix of anticipation and dread. What hidden truths loomed just beyond their reach? Jake leaned closer, ready to hear what might change everything once again. "What is it?" he demanded, every part of him urging for information that could ignite their fight even further, knowing that this could be the turning point they needed. And just as she opened her mouth, a sharp sound rang out, echoing down the street. A harrowing siren filled the air, prompting the crowd to glance anxiously around what was coming next. The siren wailed like a banshee, slicing through the tension in the air. Panic rippled through the crowd, faces shifting from curiosity to fear as they instinctively began to back away. Bodies jostled against one another while fingers pointed toward the distant sound. Jake's heart thudded louder than the siren. The woman who approached him seemed to freeze in place, her eyes wide with realization. "Jake," she started, urgency pouring from her voice. "They're coming. You need to," but her words were drowned out by the chaotic rush of footsteps and the blaring of the alarm, which grew closer. Whatever TechCorp was hiding, it felt as if they were moving in fast, ready to silence any murmurs of rebellion. Riley didn't flinch. He stood tall, arms crossed, barely pretending to care. "See?" he said, a smirk dancing across his lips. "Fear in action." Sarah moved closer to Jake, her expression laced with concern. "Jake, we need to get out of here. This is getting out of hand." Jake felt the weight of every gaze pressing down on him, a collective plea for leadership. "No," he said firmly, though his hands trembled slightly. "Not now. We've come too far to let fear dictate our actions. It's time to find out what they're hiding." Suddenly, the frenzied crowd parted, revealing a line of uniformed security personnel marching in formation. Digital badges glinted under the streetlights as they approached, an intimidating wall of authority. "Everyone, please step back," one of the officers barked, his voice booming. "This gathering is unauthorized and poses a public safety risk. We will take action if you do not disperse immediately." The crowd hesitated, caught like deer in headlights, their desire to rally smothered by fear. Some people began to retreat, but Jake felt a surge of defiance. "We are not leaving. We have a right to know the truth." But before he could form another word, the woman who had tried to speak up before pulled at his sleeve, her face mere inches from his. "No, Jake. Please listen to me." Her breath was quick, each word choking out with desperation. "It's not just about us. They're involved in something dangerous. You have to trust Move." A nearby officer barked, shoving against an older man who stumbled back. Jake's mind raced. The woman's frantic plea mixed with the clamor of urgency echoing around him. Lurking beneath it all was a sense of something greater waiting to unfold, something intertwined with TechCorp's secret. "Wait!" he shouted, raising a hand against the noise. "You can't just silence us." But his voice was barely a murmur against the whirlwind threatening to drown them all. Riley stepped closer, his shadow swallowing Jake whole. "Listen closely, Jake. You want the truth to surface? You might not like what you find. I'd advise you to protect the ones you care about." Then, in an alarming flash, the officers made a move toward Jake, hands ready, trying to clear the way. He had to act. More than just for himself, he had a community behind him, people counting on him to stand firm. "Stay back," he shouted again, eyes darting between the officers and the woman, who still held his gaze with a mixture of fear and hope. If they want our silence, they'll have to fight for it. And just then the world crackled with intensity. Something in the air shifted as the woman's expression hardened into resolve. "Follow me, Jake," she urged, her voice suddenly steadier. "I know how we can uncover the truth. But it won't be easy." Jake's heart raced. He had a choice to make now. Was he ready to plunge deeper into the unknown? Could they really expose what lay hidden behind the grand facade of Tech Corp? The crowd breathed heavy with anticipation, and Jake found the weight of their eyes upon him once more. Could he rally them? Could they walk into the fire together? "Let us do it," he replied, feeling adrenaline pulse through him. But just as he began to turn to gather everyone, the sirens blared entirely too close, and lights flashed like warning signals through the darkening sky. What new challenge awaited them in the shadows? Would they find the truth they sought, or would they become another piece of the puzzle buried forever? The woman tugged at Jake's sleeve, pulling him away from the surge of panic that enveloped the crowd. Her eyes, fierce and determined, anchored him amidst the chaos. "We have to move, now," she urged, her voice cutting through the siren's wail. That he hesitated, glancing back at the crowd, a living, breathing entity of mixed emotions. Fear flickered in their eyes, but so did a glimmer of hope. They trusted him. He took a deep breath. "Everyone," he called out, trying to sound like the leader they needed. "We need to stick together. Follow me." With that, he sprinted after the woman, weaving through the jostling bodies. She led him around the corner of a nearby building, a shadowy enclave that offered a brief respite from the chaos. Cool air rushed over them, but there was little space for comfort. "Who are you?" he asked, panting slightly, suddenly realizing he didn't know her name. "Lena," she replied, glancing back toward the street, where the glow of approaching lights danced ominously in the night. "And you're Jake. I've seen you around. You care about your community. That's why I came to find you. What do you know about Tech Corp?" Jake pressed, feeling a mix of fear and urgency surge through him. "Enough to know they're hiding something dangerous," Lena replied, her voice low but firm. "I've seen things I shouldn't have. People who don't just disappear." She paused, swallowing hard. "They're erased. You don't get to know what happened to them." Jake felt his stomach twist. "Erased? Like gone?" She nodded, her expression grim. "And if they find out that we're digging, we could be next." Determination flooded through him, chasing the fear away. "Then we have to act fast. What's our plan?" "First, we need a safe place to regroup. I have a contact, someone who knows how to get inside Tech Corp's main facility." She looked down a narrow alley behind the building, the shadows swallowing the path ahead. "But we can't just march in there. We need information first." Jake thought about his daughters back home, playing obliviously in their rooms. Would they be safe if he took this leap? But could he live knowing he did nothing? "What if we fail?" he asked, the weight of responsibility heavy upon him. Lena placed a hand on his shoulder, her grip surprisingly comforting. "We won't know unless we try. If we're going to fight, we need to know what we're fighting against." Her eyes flashed with resolve. "Together, we can do this, but only if you're in." His heart raced with determination. Could he right this wrong? For his daughters, for the community? Looking into Lena's unwavering eyes, Jake felt a shift in himself. "Okay. I'm in. What's next?" Suddenly, the distant rumbling of security vehicles echoed through the alley, drawing closer. They needed to move quickly. "This way," Lena urged, leading him deeper into the darkness. As they turned a corner, Jake felt an unfamiliar rush of adrenaline. He was stepping into the unknown, following someone who believed in something bigger than both of them. Relief mingled with fear, their path lit only by the uncertainty ahead. But what would they uncover? What dangers lurked behind the walls of Tech Corp? The thrill of potential discovery clashed with a gnawing dread as they pressed on. "Just keep focused, Jake," Lena said, sensing his unease. No matter what we find, we face it together. With every step, the stakes grew higher, the unanswered questions more haunting. And as the shadows closed in around them, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to stumble into something much larger than a simple uncovering of corporate secrets. What deeper motives lay within TechCorp's grasp? And were they ready to confront the truths that lay ahead? The narrow alley twisted sharply, revealing a hidden doorway tucked between crumbling bricks. Lena stopped immediately, her urgency palpable. "This is it," she said, peering through the small window. "This place has to be safe." Jake pressed against the wall, his heart racing. "Safe? You're sure?" She nodded, her confidence unwavering. "This contact, he's been with TechCorp's opposition. He knows the ins and outs." Lena pushed the door open, and they slipped inside. The dimly lit room was cluttered with gadgets and papers, overflowing with evidence of battles fought in secrecy. An older man sat at a cluttered desk, his face a mix of exhaustion and determination. His eyes widened when he saw them. "Lena. You made it." He rose to embrace her, an affection that made Jake feel both welcomed and out of place. "Michael, this is Jake," Lena introduced. "We need your help." Jake felt the weight of Michael's scrutiny, the man sizing him up before shaking his hand. "What are you doing here, Jake?" "I want to help," Jake replied. The words sprang from his mouth, yet the gravity hit him only afterwards. Help? What did that even mean in this perilous situation? Michael's gaze softened as he motioned them to sit. "I've got information. But first, you need to understand the stakes." They settled into mismatched chairs as Michael began. TechCorp is at the forefront of surveillance technology. They're trying to control everything. The disappearances, those people were testing their new methods. The things they're working on. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "They're nightmares. And we need to stop them." "Tell us how," Lena demanded, her fire igniting the room. Michael tapped a map spread on the table. "This is their main facility. If we can infiltrate it tonight, we have a chance to expose everything. But we have to be quick. They'll be doubling their security after this incident. You both have to be ready for anything." Jake gulped, his mind racing. He could hear his daughter's laughter in his head, innocent and full of life, and that tethered him. What kind of anything? "There's a chance we might run into security, or worse," Michael warned. "But if we get the right footage, it could open some eyes." Fear crept in again, a familiar companion. "I'm not trained for this. What if I can't protect Lena? What if I fail her?" The pit of his stomach twisted painfully with the possibility of failure. Lena reached out, resting her hand on his arm. "You won't have to protect me, Jake. We'll protect each other. It's always been about community, remember?" The irony wasn't lost on him. Here he was, the community leader, about to risk everything on a hunch. But as he looked into Lena's determined eyes, he chose to embrace the fear. "Let us do this." "Good. We move in 30 minutes, Michael affirmed, gathering equipment. "Make sure you're prepared, no distractions." They huddled over the map, plotting their entry, their resolve solidifying with each passing moment. But outside, the sound of engines and the distant echo of alarms felt like a low growl in the atmosphere. Jake knew this was more than just a fight against TechCorp. It was about standing up for those who couldn't. But could they really uncover the truth? Would they risk everything, knowing the dangers that lurked? And just as they finalized their plan, the sudden clang of a door echoed through the building, shaking their confidence. "Who's there?" Michael shouted, tension rippling in the air. Jake's heart pounded. Time had suddenly shrunk into terrifying urgency. What if they were too late? As they all turned toward the source of the sound, a chilling thought ran through Jake's mind. Had they already been discovered? The air hung thick with anxiety as they listened intently. The door had burst open with enough force to make the ancient hinges creak and groan, echoing through the cluttered room. Jake's heart raced even faster, each thump a reminder of the stakes they faced. Reality settled around them like a cold cloak. They weren't alone, and whatever had just entered could change everything. Hide! Lena whispered sharply, her eyes wide with fear. She quickly tugged at Jake's arm, urging him to crouch behind a large stack of boxes filled with old hardware. Michael joined them, his expression stern, focused on the doorway as if willing it to yield no threat. Jake's body felt electric, muscles coiled tight, ready for action. He glanced at Lena, who was breathing deeply, her lips pressed into a thin line. In this dim light, he saw the strength in her eyes, and it bolstered his courage, grounding him. They waited in dead silence, the world outside continuing its chaos, like everything had gone haywire. The uncertainty of who had entered gnawed at him. Would they be armed? Would they recognize him? Panic fluttered in his chest, echoing the alarms that blared outside. Then, slowly, a shadow appeared in the dim light, slightly illuminated by the street lamp outside. A figure stepped forward, the door now ajar. I heard voices. A familiar voice called into the room, laden with hesitation. Michael's whisper cut through the tension. Who could it be? Stay low. He edged to the side, trying to get a better view. As the figure stepped into the room, Jake's heart dropped. It was Alex, the childhood friend he hadn't seen in years. Jake? Alex's brown eyes widened in disbelief as recognition swept over him. Jake leaned forward slightly, confusion clouding his mind. What are you doing here? He asked, his voice low. I heard about what's going on with Tech Corp, Alex explained, stepping further into the room, the door creaking behind him. I came to help. His gaze darted around the room, taking in the chaotic scene. Help? Lena echoed, incredulity evident in her tone. You know the risks. They're hunting people down. Yeah, well, Alex shrugged, his voice growing firmer. I couldn't just sit back and do nothing. Not when I know people are disappearing. His determination was admirable, yet the pit in Jake's stomach grew. Did Alex fully grasp what they were about to do? Michael rose slightly, peering at Alex with a mix of hope and skepticism. You sure you're ready for this? It's not a game. I am ready, Alex insisted, the light in his eyes sparking with conviction. Jake felt a rush of relief and fear all at once. In his mind, he saw faces his daughters, innocent and joyful. Whatever they faced tonight needed to be faced with a united front. He couldn't afford to turn away anyone willing to fight for what mattered. All right, Jake said, straightening himself, voice steadier than he felt. We can't waste time. We're heading to Tech Corp's facility before their security gets tighter. You in? Alex nodded, resolve strengthening his features. Good, Lena smiled, the fear lifting just a fraction, but her eyes still held a fire. Let us get this done together. As they regrouped and finalized their plan, the adrenaline surged, drowning out the outside chaos momentarily. But just then, another sound shattered their fragile moment of hope. A loud crash followed by shouting echoed nearby. The night had turned into a drum of terror, reminding them that every second mattered. We need to move now. Michael said urgently, eyes darting back toward the door. Jake's heart thundered again, but this time, it wasn't just fear. It was purpose, a drive to protect what was his. Together, they moved toward the exit, united by a single burning question lingering in Jake's mind. Were they walking into a battle they couldn't win? Boldly stepping out into the night, Jake steeled himself for whatever awaited them beyond. Would they uncover the truth, or was this the end before it even began? The night air was thick with their fervent breaths as Jake, Lena, Alex, and Michael slipped out of the makeshift hideout into the unlit alleyway. Shadows danced under the faint glow of streetlights like ominous figures watching their every move. The urgency of their mission spurred them forward, each footstep echoing the mounting tension. I can't believe we're actually doing this, Alex whispered, almost to himself, but his brow was set with determination. Jake glanced back at him, his heart racing. We have to be brave, for our families. The thought of Lily and Emma drove him, fueling his resolve even in the face of uncertainty. They were fighting not just against Tech Corp but for every family in Maplewood. Lena took the lead, guiding them through the back streets, the glow of Tech Corp's facility gradually appearing at the end of their path. There it is, she breathed, excitement and fear swimming in her eyes. It loomed large and menacing, barbed wire topping tall fences that stood like guardians of secrets. We need a plan to get past the security, Michael urged, unfolding the map in the moonlight. Jake leaned in, glancing over the details. If we can find a service entrance around the back, it might be less guarded. Lena nodded, moving with purpose, their focus driving them further into the labyrinth of shadows. Let us go. Stick close. They rounded a corner, breaths shallow with every distant sound. The sharp cacophony of voices filtered in, mixed with the low hum of machines working tirelessly at TechCorp. Every step felt like entering a realm of corporate power and hidden truths, cautiously threading their way between fear and determination. As they approached the rear of the building, Michael motioned for silence. There, he pointed toward a door that appeared slightly ajar. That could work. Jake's heart volcanoed as they pressed close, aligning themselves for the push. On 3, 1, 2, then a rush of movement as they all flung the door open and stepped inside, the sound of it creaking underfoot dwarfed by the mechanical rumble within. Once inside, they were met by a dimly lit corridor, cluttered with black boxes and stacks of papers that smelled faintly of metal and dust. Keep your eyes peeled, Lena whispered, leading the charge, her steps quick yet soft. They moved swiftly, their excitement mingling with dread. As they reached the first door they encountered, Jake could feel his breath catch. What if we find something terrible? It's better than doing nothing, Michael replied, his voice steady. They entered a small office, cluttered with outdated technology that painted a stark contrast to the cutting-edge exterior of TechCorp. Lena flipped on a desk lamp, illuminating a variety of documents. Jake's pulse quickened again. This could be it. A chance to expose what lay beneath the glamorous facade. Hands trembling slightly, he rifled through the stacks of papers on the desk while Michael dove into a folder labeled Operations. As he scanned the contents, a sinking feeling settled in. These are reports on new surveillance technologies and here, he added, voice taut, contingency plans for dealing with dissent. Jake felt a chill down his spine. Dissent? It sounds like they've been expecting pushback for a long time, Lena snapped, her voice an urgent whisper. Suddenly, the loud blaring of sirens echoed through the corridor, shocking them into action. They know we're here. Michael hissed. We need to get the evidence and get out. Jake's heart raced faster. He opened a file labeled Project Horizon, and his eyes widened at the words he saw: technologies designed to silence communities. The room felt like it spun. They're not just surveilling. They're planning to manipulate and control. Take photos. Quick. Lena commanded as she rifled through more paper. We need to show the world what they've been hiding. Jake fumbled with his phone, snapping images of pages detailing malicious tactics engineered to dismantle small communities one by one. He was overwhelmed but focused. He suddenly realized the stakes were higher than he'd ever. Imagine that a door slammed in the distance, pouring cold dread into the room. We don't have much time. Jake urged, eyes darting back to Lena and Alex, who were gathering information frantically. Got it. Alex exclaimed, clutching a flash drive filled with data. Let us move. They turned to escape, but two towering figures emerged from the shadows, blocking their path. Security. Heavy-set and armed, their expressions were a chilling mix of authority and menace. Going somewhere? One of them sneered. Jake's heart pounded. The tightness in his throat reminded him of the girls waiting for him back home. He swallowed hard. We have the right to be here. Drop it. The other security guard barked sharply, but Lena wasn't backing down. This isn't over. The town deserves the truth. She surged forward, dragging Jake with her. Time froze for a heartbeat as they bolted toward the back door, adrenaline pumping through their veins like a lifeline. They launched through the doorway just as the security guards lunged behind them. Go! Michael shouted, urgency echoing in his tone, the thrill of danger propelling them forward into the night. Jake could hear the chaos behind them, the heavy footfalls and roars of authority as they fled. Each step felt lighter now, driven by the power of truth. They dashed through the alleyways, the cool air biting at their skin, but hope surged alongside panic. They weren't just running. They were fighting back. They finally halted at the edge of the woods bordering Maplewood, gasping for breath, hearts pounding. Lena clutched the flash drive tightly, victory lighting her face despite the fear circling them. But battle wasn't over. Jake would make sure they revealed everything they had uncovered, even if it meant standing against the fears that had once gripped them. In that moment, Jake felt a wave of warmth wash over him as he looked at the faces of his companions. They were connected by something greater now, a community rallying for the truth. And just then, a calm steadied in his chest. We can't let them silence us. We have to gather everyone and spark a change, he declared fiercely. A loud cheer erupted from Lena and the others, their resolve unbreakable. As they moved toward the town, they no longer just represented themselves, they embodied the spirit of Maplewood, ready to face down the storms ahead. They would expose what lay hidden, and they'd do it together for every child, every family, and every future that hung in the balance. The wind picked up, and as it rustled through the leaves overhead, Jake caught a glimpse of the light breaking through the darkness. Hope flowed like a river, alive and unyielding, propelling them into the fight. Together, they would rise. Together, they'd embrace a future worth fighting for. And as they emerged from the shadows and into the dawn, a fire ignited within them, the echo of their unity, a fierce proclamation of all they believed in. TechCorp would not prevail, their truth would rise above all. The fight had just begun. So here's the deal, folks. Don't just sit there, subscribe immediately to the channel so you won't miss the next exclusive stories that bring you powerful transformations. Hit that like button now, show that you support the mission and help the algorithm spread the word. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about this epic ending, and don't forget to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. This is the moment to show your support, and remember, true fans know how important it is to rally behind amazing stories. Don't wait not even one more second to share.